Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm David Stevenson, your host, and it's great to have you all with us this morning. This morning, Tracy McInnes is joining us. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, everybody.
Tracy is the CEO of Pro Sales Group and sales consultant, and she is going to be taking us through a presentation on SME survival, moving from headless chicken to strategic planning, and how you can thrive in this area of era of COVID-19. Tracy, it's a pleasure to have you with us this morning. And with that, I'll pass it over to you. And at the end, I will Tracy will take us through a presentation, and then I will moderate questions and answers at the end. So, Tracy, take it away.
Thank you, David. And morning, everybody. I hope you're all as well as can be expected in the current environment. As David said, I am the CEO of Pro Sales Group. We actually offer professional sales services, and that includes telesales, telemarketing, digital marketing, training and recruitment, and sales consultancy. So I've actually been in business for 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, but it's true. And I've seen a recession or two. So the last crisis for me was the credit crunch, and that was pretty severe, but nothing like this mother of all business challenges that we face here today. So what I want to do today is to share, first of all, my experience of this crisis and how I have reacted to it, and ideas about getting back on track, certainly from a sales point of view. So I want to explain to you a little bit about my business and where we've got to. So I predominantly offer services to the event sector. It hasn't always been the way, but we became experts in exhibitions and conference campaigns, largely telemarketing. And so the event sector have obviously been hit very, very hard in this crisis. So in February, we got our first call from our first client cancelling a project, which was actually CPHI China. So that's a pharmaceutical exhibition and conference held in China. And I thought at the time, that's a bit of a blow, a big chunk of revenue cancelling. But I didn't for 1 minute at that time imagine that what's happened now has happened. So it went from a Chinese event being cancelled through to Europe events being cancelled through to eventually the UK events that we were working on. So basically, all of my revenue disappeared in March, and all of my pipeline pretty much disappeared along with it, because we're about 90-95% events revenue. So my first reaction, in truth, was sheer and utter panic. And I went through various stages, as I say, from literally the headless chicken phase, what on earth am I going to do now? The business is over, the world is over, to a strategic planning phase, which is, I'm pleased to say, where I am now. First of all, I started to get slightly less panicked as the government introduced things like the CBILS loan, tax holidays, grants, and so on. But I was still concerned about how long the business could last, given that I've got a load of staff with no work to do that I'm having to pay. So it wasn't really until the furlough scheme was introduced that I was able to actually sit back, relax a bit, and start, to actually plan the future. So the first thing that I did was to sit down and work out a cash flow forecast going forward with all of these measures in place, with the loan, with the grant, with the tax holidays, and so on, was to work out how long could the business survive without any business coming in. And that's kind of to the end of this year, basically. But obviously, we then end up with debt, a bank loan to repay, and the tax man to pay back. So what do I need to do now? I've given myself a bit of space to the end of the year to now think strategically about how we get out of this situation, or change the situation for us for the better. Now, obviously, foolishly for me, I have, as I said, about 95% of my business invested in the event sector, and the event sector being hit so hard, has had that severe impact on me. So I need to very, very quickly find myself some new market sectors, and also find other things to sell to my existing client base that may help them, in this current environment. So what I want to talk to you about today is how the service that we offer to clients. And in fact, this is something that we had started to do for our clients probably about six months ago, and it was working very, very well. But with some adjustments now, this is working even better in this current climate. Is actually very, very fit for purpose. So I want to talk you through our basically pipeline building, lead generation process that will hopefully help you to do the same. So I'm going to take you through a little introduction, and then talk about how you build a community and therefore your pipeline. Once you've done that, what are your next steps? Share with you a case study, client case study, then talk about whether or not you outsource it or you do it yourself, and then we'll go to questions. So the whole idea is around building data, building a community through LinkedIn, and also combining that with follow-up phone calls as and when appropriate. So we data build, and at the same time send out LinkedIn messages and schedule phone calls. So we're introducing a product, service, and event, building a relationship with our new community, and then we've got the opportunity then to keep them informed, and engaged with us by posting relevant content as and when. So it's quite a sensitive way of approaching people from a sales point of view. It's not like making thousands of outbound phone calls that people don't want to take right now. They're not in a position to take those sales calls. But this is a way of building for the future now. So I'm going to talk to you about what I'm doing, for my business around this, so that you kind of understand the process that we're going through. So, as I said, I need a new target market or two, or to revisit, in fact, markets that we have worked in the past, but that have taken a back seat because we grew so much within the event sector. So I've decided that our first new target market, our priority target market, is fast-growing SME businesses. So my starting place is to identify where am I going to find those key businesses that I want to contact. So I've looked at the Sunday Times Fast Track 250 league tables and the FT 1000, Europe's fastest growing companies. So I've started there with a list of companies, and then we data capture that company information, the company address, telephone number, etc. And then we go to LinkedIn to start to build our contact level details. So we're looking for marketing directors, sales directors, CEOs, MDs, and other decision makers that may indeed be interested in our proposition. At the same time, I also realised that I've got people sitting on my CRM, and I've got people sitting on my LinkedIn connections, and they're not exactly the same. So I don't have everybody on my CRM system connected to me on LinkedIn. So we're looking at building and cleaning our existing event clients, whilst at the same time building our new market sector. So it is a self-cleaning exercise, of course. So, if you look at somebody that is on your CRM system, you go to LinkedIn to connect with them and they've moved on, you're going to follow them if they're relevant still. Maybe send them a little, message. Oh, hello, you see you popped up there. So we're building our data initially, and at the same time, we're going to be sending invitations to connect with us, and then some follow-up information. So initially, I'm building that new data. I've got 300 characters I can send as an invitation message to whet somebody's interest. Okay, so I send out a little, elevator pitch message, and then people will connect, and then I'll send out a follow-up message. So in my follow-up message, there's actually a bit of PDF information around this whole LinkedIn idea, with the process, some case studies and some costings, a little video of me introducing the company and the idea, plus the body of the message. So in fact, we've sent out to this SME audience, I think we've sent out about 400 and something, and so far I've had 60 something people connect with me, accept my connection. But that's ongoing. We're building 1,000 list there. So in my case, I'm using my own profile because it's obviously, it's got all of my history in this and experience in this sector. It resonates with people. It's the right profile to use to send out messages. When we're doing it on behalf of clients, we'll use an appropriate profile of somebody relevant in their company. So that might be a sales manager, a marketing manager, or it could be a CEO, project manager, whatever is appropriate and whatever is going to resonate with your audience, and also who do you want that relationship to be built with. So in my case, I want to build as big a community as possible that will see my personal posts as well as marketing posts, as well as me be able to communicate with them on a regular basis. So once we've built our community, and I use this word community a lot because it's all about the community. That's where our sales leads are going to come from, and it's where we have the opportunity right now in this downtime where some of us have quite a lot of downtime. We have the opportunity to really build this strong community, which gives us the foundations to be able to sell to them when things are more normal. So we've built our community, and now we can start to build content, build a content plan, start sending out content to this community to keep them engaged. And also, further communication can then develop between the salesperson and the prospect, and then we can go on to schedule telephone calls, and somewhere in the future, hopefully some face-to-face meetings. So now I'd like to share with you a case study, which actually is a little bit of a strange one because it combines both our recruitment service and our business development service. So Be the Business are actually a government-funded organisation which was set up to help the productivity levels within the UK, because before this we were lagging behind. So their target was to generate 1,000 corporate mentors to mentor SME companies to improve their productivity rates. So over 2 years since they launched their program, they have been able to generate about 200 corporate mentors, which obviously was nowhere near the 1,000 target that they were looking for. So they needed a way of ramping that up. And they came to us to fast track it. So our objective was to find 500 corporate mentors to support some SME mentees. So initially, we used actually LinkedIn Recruiter here, which it has many of the same functions as Sales Navigator, but there are some extra things like skill sets that you can build on. So we identified 1,000 potential candidates using geography, job title, company size, and some like basic criteria like that. Plus, Recruiter allowed us to look at the length of time they've been in their current role at their current business, and if they've got skill sets like change management, project management, strategic planning, and so on. So we built our initial talent pool of 1,000 people, and this is an unusual part because of the recruitment side of the business. We filtered out 25% of people that didn't fit the bill, and that was by eyeballing these candidates or prospects and deciding whether they were right or not. So we identified 750 potential mentors that we felt fitted the bill perfectly, and sent them an initial invitation of which 239 people accepted. So that was 33% of the people that we invited accepted. And in fact, that's still building, because this is, it actually, you get a bit of an initial reaction, and then, it continues to build over time as people get around to looking at LinkedIn and accepting your invitation. So once our invitation was accepted, we then sent out a detailed message with a video. So the videos were people were existing mentors, talking about their mentoring experience, so that other potential mentors could relate. And so far, and again, this is something that we started before lockdown, and it started with actually some bulk phone calls happening alongside of it, but since lockdown, it has moved to most of the communication through LinkedIn and then email and scheduled phone calls. So we're only speaking to people as and when they actually are ready for a call, because it's much more sensitive and easier to do with people working from home right now. Anyway, so far we have generated 35, actually I think that's up to 39 since I wrote this, people to become mentors. And given that Be the Business were only able to generate 200 over 2 years, and this has been a matter of weeks, and also during the COVID crisis, that's a fairly robust conversion rate. As I said, we were making calls at the same time. So some people that have agreed purely, came out of the call, but 80% of the people who agreed to become mentors had connected to us on LinkedIn. So it just shows you that the conversion rate is way higher when you talk to somebody because they've connected on LinkedIn. And importantly, all of these people were very senior leaders at large organizations who are very, very difficult to contact by phone without a LinkedIn campaign, because obviously the first thing you get is the gatekeeper saying, oh no, he won't be interested in that, he hasn't got the time for that. And of course, we still got those objections, but we were able to refer back to the fact that they had connected with with Jane from Be the Business, who we were calling on behalf of, on LinkedIn. And of course the candidates themselves They knew why we were calling because we'd had this dialogue on LinkedIn. So the whole thing would have been way less successful if we were relying, for example, purely on cold calls. So from a commercial point of view, this is something that you can do very cheaply yourself by literally having a LinkedIn Sales Navigator license for around £70 a month. And in fact, you can get that for 1 month free trial most of the time. Or you can choose to outsource it to us or another service provider, of course, to build the data, then send the messaging on your behalf, and make follow-up phone calls or not follow-up phone calls, depending on what you want. The benefit, of course, to outsourcing is that we can do 1,000, 2,000 in a very short space of time. Whereas if you're doing it yourself, you've obviously got to find the time to do that. So if you've got salespeople sitting around not being able to sell, then obviously they can be doing this themselves in bulk. But if you're sitting there as like me as a CEO trying to think about a strategic plan and worrying about furloughed staff and cash flow and VAT and so on, then you might want to actually outsource the project so that your pipeline is building in the background. And should you want to outsource to us, the way we charge it is on a cost per unit basis. So cost per piece of data built, cost per message sent, and a cost per call made. So it's very, very transparent. Obviously, the more you do, the more you pay. That's it. Felt like very, very quick. So over to questions.
Excellent, Tracy. Thank you very much for that. That was very helpful and informative. And I'm sure that there are already a lot of questions coming through. One question that I would like to ask you and the audience before we move on to the other questions. We're doing a poll of all of our database and all of our presenters, and asking them a series of questions over the next couple of weeks. And the first one we're asking is whether should businesses and the economy reopen now? So I'm going to add that poll into the message. Am I? What's your question? I don't understand how that's worked. Has that worked? I think it has. So I think we have one answer. Sorry, this is my first time doing this, so it's a bit clunky, apparently. But do you have a view on that? I mean, we've been putting it on social media and getting some very surprising results. People seem to be against it primarily.
Do I have a view on whether business should get back to normal? Is that the question?
In the economy, yes. In general.
Well, yes. I think very much so. I think the financial impacts of this, will be too much to bear for us and have longer term effects if we don't get back to some kind of business. Obviously, it has to be different and sensitive, and we have to obviously abide by all the safety measures. But I don't think there's a reason why we shouldn't be trying to do business in the best way possible at whatever pace it is we're able to do it.
No, fair enough. I think it's obviously a reasonably controversial question, so interested to see what the results are at the end. Now there are obviously some questions coming through, Tracy. Let's start with, let's see where they begin. Let's see here. There's a question here from David. Really, he'd like your view on this. Really, he's migrated his LinkedIn group to a new community platform because he found the old group clunky and lacking engagement. Not convinced that LinkedIn is the way to build an effective community because there's too much spam, fake accounts, and advertising. But he would like to hear your views on this, Tracy.
Well, I mean, I find this this one-to-one messaging quite effective. Yes, spam can be a problem. If you're sending out messaging to the wrong kind of audience, if you've not done, your proper building, I think, of, who your prospects are, and you're not sending out the right kind of message, then it will obviously be deemed as spam. But it's not sponsored content. It is one-to-one message, coming from me to you, and I've identified you as somebody who I think is highly relevant, to my business. So that's my view. I haven't used other platforms to really comment on that particular part of the question.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. We have another question here from Jean, or Jean, I'm not sure, who's saying he's pleased to be participating and thank you for the content that you've provided. Wondering about the rental market for cars. I'm wondering, if there's some advice you can give for this particularly hard-hit sector, and equally, if you have any views on what sort of sales jobs or will be ones that you think will thrive over the next couple of years.
So the car rental market from a business development point of view, I presume, is what you mean. I mean, I'm seeing, I have a lease car that actually came to the end of its lease, funny enough, just recently, and is sitting waiting to go back. Nobody's coming to collect it or anything. But I'm still getting regular emails from people, trying to sell the leasing type deals. It's very difficult one. I think the car market's going to be quite badly hit, as many will be. But all I could say is, again, if you can start building your community for when things are better, and posting regular content about what's happening in that, in the car market sector, how has it been affected? Should you think about leasing? Should you think about buying? Whatever. Again, as subtle messaging until such time as you can really, properly go out to people and sell them a new car. And the second part of the question was recruitment.
Yeah. Recruitment or jobs that you think will thrive in the sales industry on a going forward basis, areas you see particular promise in?
Well, anything technology wise, obviously that's the obvious one, and healthcare, another obvious one. Yeah, I mean, IT jobs would be the first thing that would come to mind, and obviously, those hard hit sectors, not going to be recruiting for some time. They're going to have recruitment freezes, unfortunately.
Great. Tracy, can you give a bit of a sort of an example potentially of the sensitivity that's required to go out and sell effectively right now? I think there's this impression that selling right now is distasteful or viewed as profiteering, and I think it's important that the economy does keep functioning. There are second order effects of everyone being at home. The government is taking an increased burden. Obviously, the taxpayer ultimately is responsible for that. So our taxes, I see in the paper today, are going up. So it's important that the economy does keep functioning in some way. And I think it's important that people feel that they can sell without feeling that they are doing something that's wrong, because it is important that the economy functions. And it probably requires some degree of sensitivity in the messaging, I suppose, is the key there.
Yeah, this is why this methodology is what I've come up with, because it is difficult to go out and sell really hard, or picking up the phone to people. It does feel insensitive. So actually communicating with them on LinkedIn, feels like you're communicating with them as and when they want to be communicated with. I am actually pleasantly surprised, though, in terms of the reception I feel that I'm getting right now. I do think it's not as bad as we think it is. I think there are some sectors out there that aren't suffering. There are some that are indeed thriving. in the current environment, and they're happy to be sold to. But I've even been getting messages, but in this latest campaign, this SME campaign that I'm doing, I've actually been sharing messages with somebody yesterday who was actually furloughed in the oil and gas industry. He's on furlough, but was talking about how I might be able to help them when they come out of it. And he said, by the way, I noticed your skiing pictures in the background. And he started to talk to me about the French Alps and a chalet that they run, in the French Alps. And we've scheduled a call to chat about that. So it's bringing out some, some quite nice things as well. And I do think that people, because they have more time at the moment, they're able to sit down and think about strategic plans. And people are willing to be sold to, just in a different way.
That makes sense. I think that's great advice. So look for industries that are thriving. Those ones will be happy to be sold to. And if you're selling to the sort of population en masse, obviously, have increased sensitivity in your message. But people, I think the longer this goes on, the more people will realize that things do need to go on, and small businesses need to be supported, and that people need to that things do need to continue functioning. I hope, at any rate. Henry is asking us a question about pro sales services. Wondering if you can give a sort of ballpark of the basic costs of this type of exercise, and sort of how that works, the pricing structure. Is that something you can speak to on this call?
Yes. I mean, with regard to the sort of LinkedIn, the data build and the LinkedIn messaging, we are talking about, there are variables here, so forgive me, but we're talking something like 90p to build a full data set with contact details and everything, and then roughly the same, another 90p per LinkedIn message. But there's also some volume discounts as well. When it comes to outbound calls, then it's actually region of the world, volume based, skill based. So we've got a bit of a tiered system. I'm more than happy to send that to you if you want to get in touch, as a template, because we've got some templated costs around that. But it tends to be volume and skill based related.
Well, what I'd like to do is share your contact details, the Pro Sales contact details at the end, the website, so everyone can know how to get in touch. I'd like to wait just till the end, so that it's the last comment on there, so when people come back and look, they can see that easily. Thank you for that, Tracy. We have another question from Martin. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you have any sense yet on whether people are adopting your LinkedIn approach more or less in the current crisis? And are people more active on LinkedIn, do you think?
I think they are, yeah. I think, all of a sudden, I mean, LinkedIn has been there for quite some time, and I've been quite a prolific user myself for a number of years, but it's only really now that I have proper ramped up my own use of it and realised the value, of what you can do. And I mean, the event sector is an interesting one, because they've been talking about building 365 24/7 community communications, which actually they hadn't really got round to doing. And if you think about that, if they'd have done that, sometime earlier, they would have been in a much stronger position right now. So I think people are doing it more in the current crisis, in my opinion.
Okay, that seems to be my impression as well. Engagement does seem to be up quite markedly from before, when I was using this LinkedIn. Thank you, Tracy. We have another question from Chris, who has never used Sales Navigator before, and wondering if you can explain a bit how that process works. If that's something you can speak to a bit.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so really it's about building leads. So you, once you've got your LinkedIn Sales Navigator license, you can go into a lead building process. So you're basically looking at, whatever your target criteria is. So, the type of companies you're looking for, the sector, the job titles, the size of companies, the geography, your key target markets, and you build up leads within LinkedIn that you can regularly communicate with. Sales Navigator allows you, I think it's 30 LinkedIn messages, full-on messages, or in-mails they call them, sorry, per month. But it's reasonably unlimited in terms of the number of invitations that you can send out. So you get invitations, which are short messages, and you get in-mails, which are much longer messages. And also there's different, if you're connected to that person in at the second level or third level, you get different rules, different messages that you can send. But there are some limitations in terms of how much of a message you can send out, but we haven't really hit on any real limitations as far as the invitations are concerned. I mean, LinkedIn are they're not prescriptive on this, because it is about best use of the tool. It's about people being responsible and not spamming, not sending out too many messages to too many people within a short space of time. For example, you have to adapt a fairly responsible attitude to it. But once people have got you send out your message, your email message or your invitation, and then obviously people they can decide not to link in with you, not to accept your invitation, in which case you don't take that any further, which is why it is a sensitive approach, because if people don't want to connect to you, they don't, and you don't communicate with them, and if they do, you've then got the opportunity to build that relationship and build that community.
Great, thank you, Tracy. We have another question from Sharon, who, I'm not sure I understand this question, but she has a business, a digital print blended service, which allows businesses to engage with their customers and social distance. She's reluctant to invest in LinkedIn, but reluctant to use someone else's platform. She's wondering whether to invest in LinkedIn, but reluctant to use someone else's platform. I'm not sure I'm understanding that question. She's wondering what your advice would be. Is that something you understand?
I don't fully understand the question either, really, in terms of someone else's platform. I mean, LinkedIn is something that, I don't know how many millions of people are using the platform.
When you engage with a client and you use LinkedIn to communicate with other sales targets, how are you interfacing with them? Is it sort of sub-branded? Does it look like it's coming from the client, or is it coming from Pro Sales?
No, we just manage the communication through that person's profile. Okay. So in the case of Be the Business, for example, there's a project manager called Jane, who is the head of that project in Be the Business. So all the messaging went out from Jane, but we were managing her profile, the responses day to day. So we're logging into her profile all the time, checking for responses, responding back, scheduling calls, and so on. But it depends on the client as to what level we get involved. Sometimes we're just literally sending out the template messaging. People are accepting the invites. Maybe we'll send out the follow-up message, and then the salesperson will take it on from there. But with Be the Business, because Jane's not a salesperson, she's not following through on this. She's just a figurehead. And she trusts us, to keep the lines of communication open with these people and build them up to the point where they sign up with us, they register with us as a mentor. So it depends on the client, but we manage somebody else's profile, in that respect.
Okay, excellent. I think that's what I was wondering, and I think that's what most people were wondering here. I think Sharon has clarified slightly. She was worried because she heard about someone yesterday who built up a large Facebook group, and then Facebook locked them out. So she was wondering whether it was better to build, an engagement platform on your own website versus LinkedIn. But I think obviously the reach of of a platform like LinkedIn is so marked. It's kind of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that, given what LinkedIn is and how many people are on the platform, I don't think that they could change the goalpost so dramatically that, you would lose all the community that you've built up.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. It's certainly an excellent a tool for business people to connect with other people. And I think probably unparalleled in terms of its reach in that respect. Matt is asking another question, wondering about how to keep content fresh. How do you keep things fresh in terms of content to keep clients interested? While events are on hold, do you find you repeat a lot of the same information?
Well, that is a difficult one. All I can advise is, you really need to sit down and plan your content, throughout the year as best as you can. Think about headings, think about what, where your expertise is. Headings about things that you can talk about. And build that content out and see how much content you can build, and then decide how many times a week, a month, you're going to post something. A lot of people obviously, comment on other people's content and share it, and that's where I believe most of the communication actually comes from, with people resharing and commenting on stuff that's out there. But build a content plan would be my advice.
Okay.
It's difficult.
No, of course. Thank you. That's helpful. Yes. Okay. We have another question here from Ryan, who is from an animation studio, and they often share their content on LinkedIn, but they don't see the same engagement on LinkedIn as they do on other platforms. And wondering if you have any tips or advice on how the algorithm works and who decides who sees a post.
Well, my experience is very different for different industries. Obviously, depending on what you're what you're talking about, what your content is, and who you're targeting. I think you get quite different results. I'm not sure about how the algorithms work, I'm afraid, but I do think it is industry and kind of content specific, probably more industry than anything else, and about building that the right data in your community in the first instance. Because if what you've got on there is just a load of people you've accepted and linked in with because they've asked you to, for example, rather than strategically working out who is your right audience, then you're going to get a different result.
It certainly seems that posting posts on LinkedIn is not the same as Facebook, for instance, or Instagram, where you get this great engagement, but you have this ability to contact people one-on-one and start a dialogue with them, which is obviously a great benefit, and where the service really shines, I think, and where the platform really works best. Thank you for that, Tracy. We have a question here from Matt, which is obviously a very tricky question. How can you plan when no one knows what will happen, i.e. future events, etc.?
Well, you can't. Again, this is why I went down this route for us, is because I don't know when I can start selling to people. I don't know when my event sector is going to be back in business. But so the only thing I can do is to keep in touch with them and make sure that I know who they all are, and that I've got the broadest possible community within that particular sector as possible. So who's moved. People may well obviously move on a lot more through this process, unfortunately, where jobs will potentially go. But even more important actually that you've got them on LinkedIn in your community, because you're then going to be able to follow them wherever they end up going. So it's not really a question of planning, it's a question of keeping in touch. You keep those lines of communication open, and making sure that you've got the best possible community with your existing market, and you're looking for, in terms of planning, you're looking for those new markets who is thriving, who can you be selling to now, or who can you be talking to about, somewhere 2-3 months down the line, who might be ready to buy.
I think that's great advice. If you can identify an area where your business can be, pivoted or refocused to an area that is thriving, then obviously that would make sense in the near term.
And services as well, because at the moment, where we did a lot of telemarketing, telesales for the events sector, I'm talking to those guys about LinkedIn, about digital marketing, and building data now, because that's all they can do. They can't be selling somebody into a stand space down the line, because people don't know if those events are going to be taking place, but they can be building their community. So I'm cross-selling, as well as so introducing new market sectors, as well as finding new services to your existing market sector, as well as finding new markets.
That's great advice. Definitely look for new opportunities and try and identify areas that you haven't thought of potentially, where you can implement your product effectively. If people want to get in touch with ProSales, how would they do that?
ProSalesGroup.co.uk is the website, and you can get in touch with me from there. I think I can send something out to everyone who attends after this anyway, can't I, David?
Yes.
So I can do that. I can send an email out to everyone, and you can decide whether you want to use it or not.
Absolutely. So we can certainly send that out for you. Just quickly before we sort of wrap things up, the results of the poll have come in, and it's evenly split, 50-50. Half of participants think the business and the economy should reopen now, and half do not. So there is a lot of uncertainty there. Obviously, people are still concerned about this environment and the potential of getting ill, but equally, people are concerned about the potential of making sure their business survives. So it's a very difficult situation that we all find ourselves in, and it seems that the opinion is evenly split between both. So interesting results there. So yes, we have no more questions coming in, Tracy. But I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning. It's been a fascinating presentation. And again, the contact details for ProSales Group are there. The website is prosalesgroup.co.uk. So do reach out if you're looking to explore new markets and need expertise in targeting those. So Tracy, thank you so much for your time this morning.
You're welcome, and thank you everyone for listening.
Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you.